The start is perfect. You surprise your opponent with a great combination. But if I want to be annoying, I have to tell you that here you had to add an high kick instead than a middle kick, because you had some chance to score with an high kick, so you can get more points with high kick compared to middle kick when your opponent is in the corner. Because when your opponent is in the corner, you can even fake some middle kick and then score to high kick, because it's closer to your opponent, so you are in high kick range compared to middle kick that you can even score within the center of the mat. One of you asked me to review your fight, and today I'm going to do my best to help you based on all the information I've acquired by analyzing high-level fights. Nice to meet you, I'm Lorenzo, and I love to share my Taekwondo fight analysis passion on YouTube. I hope my content will come in handy for you, and if you want to improve your sparring knowledge with me, just click the subscribe button and let me know your feedbacks about my content or this fight in the comment section. When we are in the corner, we feel a psychological pressure, and you can notice also in your dojang when your opponent presses you in the corner, you can actually backstep because you are going to get out, so you are going to take a penalty, a gun jump. And that's why it's the same for your opponent, so if you press your opponent in the corner, he's going to feel the pressure, he can't backstep, he can just go on the sideways, or maybe he can clinch. So you have a higher chance to score with high kick or spinning back kick because you are in the right range to score with those techniques. Then the judge, in my opinion, didn't see the point for that punch because because they didn't watch it correctly. You start with the right leg and struck a punch with the left arm, so your opponent cover your arm, cover your technique, and then you weren't able to watch it. Probably if you start with the left leg and throw a right punch, that could be a point, but in my opinion this action was successful, so don't think about this little thing. And advise you to keep this combination in your bag, don't change it, it's not needed for now. In my opinion here we have two mistakes. You open with the roundhouse kick from too far distance. The step plus the roundhouse kick give all the time to your opponent to read your movements. So if you want to perform this action, in my opinion, you have to split the techniques in two steps. The first one is to slowly move in closer to your opponent, then you can use a feint to break the rhythm of your opponent, and then you can strike a roundhouse kick, or maybe you could like side kick feint and then you throw a roundhouse kick. In this case, you reduce your chance that your opponent counter like this. The second mistake is that you repeat the same pattern, so you start in the same way like you start in the first second, so he expected probably another roundhouse kick compared maybe to a side kick. It's never a good idea to repeat the same thing two times, overall sequentially. This combination is very good, as you can watch by changing your techniques, your opponent wasn't able to read your strategy, and you successfully landed this combination. This first side kick, in my opinion, is a problem. This is a weak side kick where you weren't able to unbalance or do anything. It was just a weak side kick. You have to put much more confidence on your side kicks, or you risk that your opponent easily counter your techniques, because you have to unbalance your opponent. If you want to unbalance your opponent, you have to use powerful side kicks, or maybe high side kicks if you want to strike weaker kicks. In this way you are going to take 3 points on your opponent's head. But in my opinion, if you want to push with your side kick, you have to use a powerful side kick. If you watch Rashidov, every time he unbalances his opponent, the same for Park Tae-hoon, a lot of high level players push a lot with their side kicks, because you have to stop the opponent action, and you have even to score points. And after that side kick, you did very well, and you were able to get also greatly. You recover after that situation. Here we have another mistake. Your opponent was able to counter your side kick because it was a weak and slow side kick, so your opponent was able to read it and to respond with the proper attack. So the problem isn't that you didn't protect well, but why you were in that situation. And the reason is that you throw a weak side kick or front roundhouse kick without even be ready to continue the action. So you throw a weak side kick and you stopped close to your opponent, and your opponent was able to take this mistake and he counter with the right technique in this time frame. This is probably the biggest mistake. You open with a crescent kick, but you are 2 squares away from your opponent, even farther than in reaction. Even with a much longer step, you won't be able to achieve anything with this technique. So you just waste a lot of stamina to perform this axe kick. You just give the chance to your opponent to counter with a better technique, or much better with an easier technique. In my opinion, what you have to do is first land the right distance. You can do with pads, or maybe just in your dojang. You just need to try to understand what's your range, what's your legs range, and for sure 2 squares is not your range. So if this is not your range, you have to first close the distance. This means that you can slowly advance and be ready to get a kick and maybe counter to that kick, or maybe you can just use feints, or maybe step in, feints, and strike your kicks. As last, you can easily just slowly go in and then just throw your kicks. You have multiple combinations that you can do. But I advise you to implement even feints in your playstyle so that you can break the opponent thinking flow and he will throw maybe a counter when it's not needed. The second problem is that you use too much the rear leg to open the actions. The faster leg in Taekwondo is the front leg because it's closer to your opponent, so it's much easier to score on the chest or the helmet with the front leg compared to the rear leg. And the other problem is that you open with the rear leg from a further distance. The roundhouse kick with the rear leg is a great technique if you are close to your opponent, and if we watch high-level fights, a lot of points, probably most of the points, are done with the roundhouse kick stance, so they score a lot of roundhouse kick in a closer stance. It's very hard that they are able to score points with the roundhouse kick with the rear leg from a square away from their opponent, but they score a lot of points where they are very close. And if we watch even high-level fights, we can watch that most of counter techniques are performed against people that open with the roundhouse kicks from a farther distance, because it's easy to read this technique for a Taekwondo player. We have the habits to read the roundhouse kicks. We watch the roundhouse kick every single time, so it's very simple to read this technique for us. Seems that you act very well, you are very good in situation, you kick a lot, you kick more than your opponent, and this gives you a lot of points. So this is one of your perks, one of your skills. You are able to score a lot of points because you kick a lot, or better, a lot more than your opponent in those brawls. But even in those situations, you make some mistake. What happens is that you collide a lot your leg with your opponent. The worst thing that you can do is collide your leg with your opponent. So if you're able to read in clinch situation the opponent's attack, what you have to do is to kick on the other side. Because if you kick with your right leg, meanwhile the opponent is kicking you with the left leg, you are going to collide your legs. So you are going to get bruises, first of all, and you are not going to score points because your leg is going to collide, so you waste energy. So the best thing that you can do is block the opponent leg with your right arm, but you have to strike with your left leg. You are going to score points, you are going to get 2 points or 3 points, meanwhile you block the opponent action. This is the perfect way to act in clean situation. So you block the opponent leg and you strike with your opposite leg. So in my opinion, the idea of fight in clean situation is that we have dodge, we have this chance, we can dodge everything, so we just go away, we get further, we push away our opponent, we are further, so like clinch, we just avoid the situation by dodging, or we can block and counter at the same time. My idea in a fight is that if you block and counter at the same time, it's the best option that you can perform. Because if you only block, your opponent still has some chance to score on you. But if you block and kick, you have the same chance of your opponent to get points. So in the end, probably your opponent get some points, but you tried. Or maybe you're able to block your opponents and you earn points. This is my idea of clinches, of course. The moment where you reset the action for your opponent, in my opinion, is strategically very bad, because you can press your opponent in a moment where you can get more points. Instead, you give him the space. I can understand that you maybe give the reset the action just because you want to rest, that's okay, but you have then move slowly back away. But if you want to push more your opponent, you have to remove this thing and press the opponent in the corner, because now you are forced to do all the work again to bring your opponent in the corner. In this case, the sidekick is very good, but by playing this so close range, you risk some injuries. So if you want to rest in those situations, you have to backstab. In this case, you open with the sidekick, but your opponent was enough good to respond, and this is not good because you close the distance and you are not doing anything more than the sidekick. This means that you are in your opponent range and your opponent can score more points. If you want to perform this sidekick, you have to try to clinch at least, or maybe just don't use the sidekick, or maybe use like a cut kick, so you push your leg to keep your space, so you defend your space. Instead, in this moment, you attack your opponent and you attack your opponent's space, and your opponent was able to react properly. In this moment, you played it very well, you were able to get out to the corner and you were able to clinch to restart the action. Perfect. This is a beautiful question mark kick that allows you to score 3 points. The reason why you got punished here is because you started later than your opponent, you were slower than your opponent, he was able to get a higher spot in midair, so he had more chance to score on you than you on him. And as last, you didn't use enough strength on your sidekick, so you weren't able to unbalance your opponent. As I can watch from this fight, your real weakness, your main weakness, are your openings. You do not open action in the right way. Sometimes your sidekick are a benefit for your opponent because he's able to counter and respond well and take more points than you. So you try to fight in a clinch by opening with the sidekick, but most of cases your opponent respond well and you lose points. So instead of then being able to get an advantage by opening first, you get penalized most of times. Because you make big mistakes on your opening, you don't use feints, your sidekick are weak, and you create some big time frame to let your opponent score on you. When your opponent rush like this, those are the moments where he can come back, and you have to create a situation where you waste his time. because of course you are winning. So instead than only block every technique with a passive attitude like this, I advise you to play more aggressive. For instance, you can throw a spinning kick and you can even fall, that's not a problem unless you are ready for gum jump for penalties. Or in this case, you can force a clinch and you earn 1-2 seconds until the referee comes to split you. Those are few tips that you can implement and use in those cases. The start of the second round is very good, you are enough aggressive and you kick more than your opponent, and this allow you to get 3 points very easily. But the ending is not good. I don't like to push my opponent, but I feel to waste a lot of energies, a lot of stamina, unless my opponent is very weak compared to me. So when I bring the opponent to the corner, I prefer to strike high kick because I feel that I can get more points with high kick in those situations. This is a very nice spinning kick and you get out to the corner. That's a perfect situation. You played it very well. The red did the same on your mistake. And you can watch how much it's dangerous to open with a roundhouse kick from a far distance. You were able to counter it very well with this front probably turning kick. But at this point, if you are able to counter the opponent's opening like this making me think that you have some sort of talent. And I want to ask you, why didn't you play more defensively for this second round? You just play too much aggressive, you open too many situations, because if you are good to defense and counter, probably you could win much easier this match. So why you open most of the action if sometimes you can let your opponent open and you can get more points from. If there are people like you that does not know to open actions very well, you can abuse those mistakes and you can get points. What I can tell you is that in your next file, in your next Nate's training in dojang, instead of open, just focus on weight your opponent. Try to weight your opponent and try to understand if you can maybe grow this sort of talent or grow those defensive skills. Because in my opinion, the defense side, the defense style is much easier compared to the aggressive style. You need a lot more skills to play aggressively compared to a defensive style. Maybe you can discover some part you didn't know. The reason why your opponent was able to score 6 points in the few seconds is because he rushed on you and you defended passively, for what I can watch. You mainly tried to dodge and block, but as I told you, if you just dodge and block, of course your opponent has still some chance to score your points on you. And when you were in the corner, like in this case, you weren't able to dodge your opponent kicks and he was able to score. What you have to focus, in my opinion, is to block the opponent rush. I know that this is not easy because we still feel a little bit paralyzed when our opponent is very aggressive. And to block an aggressive action, you have to use powerful side kicks, maybe some spinning kicks, or much easier we can try to clinch. As last, if you are good to counter, you can play in the rush, so you block and counter at the same time when they are kicking on you. And of course try to strike with your legs on the opposite side compared to your opponent, so you're not going to collide with your legs. Or maybe you can read his movements and you can anticipate his kicks by lifting your leg on the same side first, so you get an higher position and he's not able to strike on your chest. Now, if you are winning and you are tired, you have to keep your energies. You don't have to waste your stamina. This means, in my opinion, that you have to not open actions because you have to keep energies to counter or block an aggressive opponent. So this tornado kick was not the best in my opinion. Overall, when you are tired, you are not going to score to strike a very nice tornado kick, and this was not the best, of course. And in this moment that you are very close, you had to clinch to last time, but seems that you did it a few seconds late, so congratulations. You didn't open an action and counter for 2 times and you scored both times. Imagine what could happen if you played like this for the entire second round. You could win 4 points cap in just 1 minute probably. In my opinion, you have to focus a little bit more on this style, on this play style, because probably this will allow you to win much more matches. As you can watch also at the black belt level, people are not very good on striking first. So it's much easier to defend compared to attack, because you have to learn a lot of combination to attack. You have to learn to feint, you have to learn a lot of skills that are not easy to learn unless you have a very good master that focus on you. Or much better, you have even a lot of sparring patterns that are better at you and that can teach you. But of course, it's not something that you can't learn alone. You have just to watch high-level fights and emulate the same attacking patterns. You open with another weak side kick and your opponent punished you again. If 3 times on 3 you make the same mistake in a fight, in my opinion, this is an important thing to fix. And you have to work a lot on your dojang to remove this mistake, because in my opinion you likely win this match because you were better, of course, than your opponent. You were able to take more points than your opponent. You were able to create more opportunities to score points, so you were actually better than your opponent. But if your opponent were slightly better on counter your openings, you could lose this match. So with this fight analysis, we're able to discover some big mistakes that you have to fix. And the easiest way to solve this problem is by working on kicking powerful side kicks with the goal to unbalance your opponent. Don't throw weak side kicks to annoy your opponent like high level players because they know how to use cut kick in the right. But in this moment, you don't know how to use cut kick. So just push with powerful side kicks. Then in future, you are going to train even the cut kick. Then what you miss are the use of feints. I never watch you to use a single feint in this fight. This is a problem because feints are great to stop the thinking follow and the reaction pattern. Your opponent maybe is going to throw a roundhouse kick, but you use a feint and then it gives you a nice time frame to score with a side kick or maybe a knife. People use now the letting cook with the feints, right? Think that when we use feints in a fight, we flip a sort of coin. Our opponent has a 50% that you are going to strike or not. And if we use feints multiple times, we are going to create a tension and we sort of paralyze our opponent's movement, so we can strike with the side kick much easier and we can unbalance our opponent. In the last seconds you acted very well, you hit a lot of your opponent and you waste a lot of your opponent time, and probably you were able even to get some points compared to your opponent in these few seconds. But what really mattered that you were able to waste your opponent time. So attacking in the last seconds is still a good idea to waste your opponent time. If you attack, your opponent has to block and counter or maybe needs to dodge, so you can take some free seconds. Maybe you can use also a spinning kick to waste even another second. So by action, you're wasting 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. And there is no time for your opponent to come back. So you want to improve in Taekwondo, and you want to even use your social media, maybe to help your family business, or maybe to get more customers on your dojang. As long as you want to support this channel, what you have to do is just to subscribe to my membership on Ko-Fi. Here you can gift me a coffee for those information for this video, and I'm going to gift you a full social media course and an in-depth Taekwondo course for a few dollars. If you want to send me your fight, remember that I can't review people under 14, just to YouTube copyright and to avoid some restriction. And if you want to send me your fight, you can find all the details in the description.